The people, the headlines, the issues impacting you and your family this week in Cincinnati on 9 on your side.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to This Week in Cincinnati. I'm Tanya O'Rourke. Today we're looking at Ohio Issue 1, the Drug and Criminal Justice Policies Initiative. It would amend the Ohio Constitution in several ways. It would make felony 4 and 5 drug possession and drug use crimes misdemeanors with no jail time for first and second offenses. It would ban judges from sending people to prison if they violate probation with something other than a new crime, such as missing a parole appointment. It could cut prison time for offenders who complete rehabilitation programs, with exceptions for those convicted of murder, rape, or child molestation. It would take the money saved by putting fewer people in prison and use it for drug treatment and crime victim programs. And in some cases, people could petition the court to be resentenced for drug crimes or have those charges changed. You're going to hear from both sides of Issue 1 today. We begin, though, with those in favor of Ohio Issue 1. And joining us today is Johnsongrove with the Ohio Justice and Policy Center. We thank you for being here with us. Your Policy Center is one of the many groups that do support Issue 1. So give me your 30-second elevator speech on why this is important.
Issue 1 is going to make Ohio safer by investing in health. For too long, we've invested in prison bars as a way to produce safety. And there are some situations where that's appropriate. But what we're seeing is our family members who are addicted, people that have been trapped by the cycle of addiction, are only getting further trapped in the cycle of incarceration. Issue 1 changes that significantly by shifting people and money that doesn't belong in the prison budget and in prison out into places where they can get better and where we can invest that money in ways that are more productive.
Those against Issue 1 say this just goes too far. And they say that treatment for addiction is not provided nor required by this amendment, and that so an addict is essentially on their own to get treatment, that many addicts could forego treatment entirely without the threat of imprisonment.
Yeah, it's really important. You know, even Chief Justice O'Connor and others have acknowledged addiction is a brain disease. And if as soon as we make that statement, as soon as we really make that shift to understanding that this is a mental health, a brain disease, think about any other disease, mental health or physical health, where we threaten someone with punishment in order to get them better. There's nothing, literally nothing else that we do this with. And so it's a time to really come to grips with the fact that, in fact, the research shows that incarceration is not a way to get people better. In fact, and this is the saddest fact, you know, really even for those that are well-intentioned in choosing judges that choose to incarcerate people and threaten them with incarceration to get them better, when people come out of incarceration, 7 published studies have shown that they are 8 to 10 times more likely to die of an overdose. So we think we're saving their lives by putting them in jail for the short term, but in the long term, we've signed a death warrant. That's what happens when we choose incarceration instead of directly sending people to healing. Issue 1 will create more resources for healing in the community so people don't have to enter the criminal justice system.
There really is, though, no process set up, though, to make that possible. So if this did pass, for example, what would happen immediately? That, you know, there are not enough beds in treatment facilities to get people in?
So what Issue 1 does, that's probably the best part about it, is it shrinks the prison population safely and carefully, and then it shifts the savings over to drug treatment. So we think that we'll save about $100 million a year out of the state prison budget because we won't be sending people there. Then we require 70% of that money to be invested in local community-based drug treatment so people don't have to enter the criminal justice system in the first place. I
think a lot of people do think that treatment versus imprisonment might be a great idea. However, this also has to do with drug trafficking as well. And possession of under 20 grams of uncontrolled substances would be reclassified as a misdemeanor under this particular amendment, constitutional amendment. That those opposed say that would make this the most liberal drug policy in all of the United States. And because we are sitting in Hamilton County at the kind of the crossroads between Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, that drug traffickers will just flood into our community because they know that they're not going to get charged with a felony.
Yeah, and I'd like to unpack all the lies that just got stacked up there, and not yours, but the ones that have been named lies by PolitiFact, by the Dispatch, by the Akron Beacon Journal. So let me lay these out. Number 1, Issue 1 does not touch trafficking, right? So what our opponents are saying is that somehow these drug traffickers are going to get off. In fact, the law about trafficking that is currently being enforced in Ohio every day of the week in every corner of the state is getting traffickers for large quantities of fentanyl like that. I talked to a federal prosecutor that just wrapped up a fentanyl trafficking case for 2 grams. Okay, so this boogeyman argument that 20 grams of fentanyl is going to somehow like get skated through and nobody's going to get any punishment is absolutely false. That's why these other news outlets have said it's false. The other thing there, though, and I think you talked in addition to how trafficking was going to work, was remind me.
That they were saying that this is the most liberal, would become the most liberal drug law.
That's not true. So 11 other states in the country have reduced drug possession from a felony to a misdemeanor. And the sky has not fallen. There's no indication that there's been any increase in drug crimes, in drug use, in overdose deaths. No indication that public health or public safety is damaged by choosing misdemeanor instead of felony. That's just, again, another kind of like boogeyman in the closet argument. That's all our opponents have to rely on is fear and scare tactics. What Issue 1 is trying to do for our families is finally move past the fear of the criminal justice system and get healing when they need it.
What about the idea that this is an unfunded mandate, according to those opposed to it, that this is going to really shift the burden financially from the state, which is they say it will empty the prisons, which might be exactly what you would like to see happen, but that it would
Not
shift.
Exactly,
well, you know what I mean, like as far as get people who need drug treatment.
Sure.
Out of prisons and into treatment, but it would shift the burden financially onto local governments. How does this get funded?
Yeah, so really specifically, our amendment contains a very careful formula for calculating the savings from each person not in prison, because that money then has to be aggregated. We think that there'll be approximately 10,000 fewer people in prison, not that they'll get let out, but most of it just be averted from not going in. And because the prison population can drop so significantly, we can save that money and invest it locally. 70% of that money is going to drug treatment, 15% of the money is going to trauma recovery for crime survivors, and the last 15% is an additional portion of money just for local governments to adapt to the changes required by this amendment. So both the drug treatment money, which can go to local governments that are doing drug treatment things, even drug courts, as well as that last 15%, which is totally for local governments to adapt. All that is resources that allow the local governments to be able to handle what we're shifting here.
But again, and to go back to this, they're saying, those opposed say, if you don't complete your drug treatment program, you don't go to these classes, there is no punishment. You can't, and so sometimes people do need their feet held to the fire.
Yeah, so let's be clear. We are not decriminalizing or legalizing anything. When you take a drug possession case from a felony to a misdemeanor, it's definitely still a crime. And although jail isn't allowed in the first or second one because we should allow people a chance to rehabilitate and recover, it does allow probation. And when someone violates probation, and if they are found to be a danger to themselves or others, they are allowed to be even put in jail for that. So there's all kinds of accountability that's totally possible.
Okay, so this is a constitutional amendment. Ohio's constitution would be amended by this, should it pass Issue 1. Why make it a constitutional amendment?
Yeah, so the reason we chose...
Because it's hard to change once it becomes an amendment.
In 1996, the legislature passed a bill that was supposed to reduce the prison population. It kept going up. In 2011, they did the same thing. They called it the Justice Reinvestment Initiative, and that was supposed to reduce the prison population, move money into treatment and more productive local healing practices that reduced prison population. Prison population stayed steady at 50,000. 2015 to 2017, the legislature commissioned this thing, the Recodification Committee, which is supposed to rewrite all the criminal codes. My executive director spent time for 2 years on this thing. They didn't put together one piece of legislation out of that. The legislature has failed again and again and again to meaningfully reduce both the number of drug-addicted people in our prisons and the dollars we waste putting them there, and put it somewhere else. They cannot seem to get this done. They're afraid and unable to get it done. The people of Ohio need this now. 14 people, 14 people are dying per day of the opioid addiction crisis. We have to meaningfully do this. The legislature has failed, and my favorite quote out of the Ohio State Constitution is the first sentence. All political power is inherent in the people. This is the chance for Ohio voters to say yes to something past the legislators.
And we're going to have to leave it there. We thank you so much for your time and your passion. Up next, those opposed to Ohio Issue 1. A few weeks ago, I spoke with Ohio Chief Justice Maureen O'Connor about her concerns. That interview is next on This Week in Cincinnati.
The people, the headlines, the issues impacting you, all on This Week in Cincinnati on 9 on Your Side.